final section is about Arjuna's question and Bhagwan's response about the perfected one who has transcended the Gunas. So just to kind of go back one step, in chapter number 13, we saw the relationship between Purusha and Prakriti from 13:20 to 24, which was saying Purusha, seated in Prakriti, experiences the gunas born out of Prakriti. See how the link is between the last chapter and this chapter. So Bhagwan has taken this one particular verse and elaborated on these gunas. And what are the experiences which we are going to experience? He has already told us attachment, how it's going to develop, what is the way in which these gunas become predominant, and what happens when they become predominant. This is what Purusha, which is seated in Prakriti. Consciousness in matter, which is the conjunction which we have been talking about, that we are a conjunction of Purusha and Prakriti. At this time, we don't know Purusha at all. All we know is body, mind, intellect. This is me. This is what I'm called. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. This, that, and the other. We got totally identified with the experiences of the Guna, born of Prakriti. But Purusha is seated here right now. And this attachment to the qualities is the cause of his birth in good and evil wombs. Once I get attached to these experiences which are going on, I say, I'm the doer of all these actions. I'm the enjoyer of all these various different things which are getting in my experience. I become attached to these qualities: happiness, knowledge, action, greed, heedlessness, delusion. And all this is because Purusha, seated in Prakriti, experiences all these things and gets bound to the body, mind, intellect, to Prakriti. And the Supreme Purusha in this body is also called the spectator, the permitter, the supporter, the enjoyer, the great Lord, and the Supreme Self. Brahman is not out there somewhere. He's seated right here in you and me. Bhagwan is telling us, find that Purusha within yourself, whether you see him as the Bhokta, as the enjoyer of all these experiences, whether you see him as a supporter, the permitter, the spectator, the great Lord, the Supreme Self. Purusha is right here in this body. How to identify this? See, the wonderful knowledge of Bhagavad Gita brings you right down to your lived experience. It's not a high philosophy which is out there somewhere. It is here and now, practical in the way in Bhagwan tells us, do this, do this, do this, and you will experience the truth about yourself. He who thus knows the Purusha and Prakriti together with the Gunas, he, Bhagwan says, in whatever condition he may be, he is not born again. This is the promise of Bhagwan, is that when we know Purusha and Prakriti together, in other words, that I can identify this play of the Gunas taking place in the body, mind, intellect. At the same time, I identify myself as this Purusha, this consciousness, which is the seer, which is the spectator, the observer of whatever is going on. When I know both these things taking place simultaneously in my experience and can separate these two things apart, and I can say to myself, these are the Gunas, this is the play of Prakriti, this is Purusha, I am this consciousness, I'm the observer, I'm the witness, I'm the spectator of this play of the Gunas in myself and the play of Gunas in relationship to the world. If I get to this point, I have this supreme knowledge and therefore no coming back. Liberation. He is not born again because moksha, the purpose of life, has now been achieved. So what is the sadhana? Sadhana to know Kshetrajna, the Purusha. This we learned in the last chapter. Some by meditation, dhyana yoga, behold the self in the self by the self. Others by jnana yoga, sankhya yoga, which is the practice of shravanam, mananam, nididhyasanam, the contemplation on the highest knowledge, and then getting such a clarity about this knowledge that you can begin to tease these two things apart in the body-mind intellect. And others by Karma Yoga. So Bhagwan has already told us, whichever your entry point is, from there you can start your journey. If you have not done any spirituality before in your previous lives or in this life, your starting point is Karma Yoga. Then Bhakti Yoga, which comes together with Karma Yoga. Then Jnana Yoga. Then Dhyana Yoga. And then establishing ourselves in the truth by beholding the self in the self by the self. So again, very clear idea about what the journey is, how do we get there, what are the different stages, purification and establishing ourselves in the knowledge through Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Dhyana Yoga. This becomes the way in which we carry out our sadhana and know the Purusha. So remember, it is about knowing the Purusha in this play of the Gunas. And this is what we are trying to think about, what is the best way of doing that, which Bhagwan is telling us. Others also not knowing this worship, Bhakti Yoga, have heard of it from others. They too cross beyond death because that is their starting point. They listen to others, they remember what others are telling them, they haven't read the scriptures or done anything, yet because they are listening to this highest knowledge, heard from others, eventually they also cross over because they have already stepped onto the spiritual pathway. As I've said before, Bhagwan has not left anybody out. He says, wherever you are in terms of your human condition, you can step onto the path one way or the other. And he sees who sees all actions are performed by Prakriti alone, and the self is actionless. Self is without an action. It is not the doer. It is not the enjoyer. It is Prakriti just playing about in itself. And therefore, Gunas playing in the Gunas is what we are experiencing. Unfortunately, because of Maya, because of avidya, we got identified with the body, mind, intellect. But when man, he who sees the whole variety of beings as resting in one, resting in that one reality, when all these forms are seen as all in one. Remember that concept before? All in one, spreading forth from that alone through the effect of Maya. Creation has been coming into existence with all this variety of beings. When we see this, resting in the one, which means we have kind of transcended and we are witnessing all these things which are going on, spreading forth from that one alone, he becomes Brahman. Supreme knowledge attained how? By separation, witnessing, by separation of Purush Prakriti. And when we abide in the Purusha as the witnesser, as the Upadrashta, as we mentioned in the last chapter, then one becomes Brahman. So this is now Arjuna asked this question. What are the marks of the one who has crossed over the Gunas, O Lord? What is his conduct? Question number 2. Question number 3. How does he go beyond the Gunas? 3 questions Arjuna is asking. So the Lord replies, activity, light, delusion, when present to Pandava, he hates not, nor longs for them when they are absent. Here's the first instruction. What Bhagwan is describing is the perfected one. What are the characteristics of the perfected one? Just like in chapter number 2, Sthita Prajna, the perfected one in that case. Here, perfected one who has transcended the Gunas. In relationship to Gunas, perfected one means what? It means that whatever is going on in our body, mind, intellect, if these are absent or present, whether it is light, sattva, rajas, activity, tamas, delusion, he doesn't hate them. Because if you start hating, oh my God, I've gone back into rajas. Oh my God, I've gone back into tamas. Then you got a double problem. First of all, you got the gunas playing there, and then you compound it by hating it, which means that you're not really moving in the right direction. What you have to do, samatvam. Stay steadily, just as an observer. You don't hate, nor do you long for them if they are absent. So this is the first thing which Bhagwan is telling Arjuna. seated like one unconcerned, udasin, upadrashta, just the observer, not concerned with whatever is going on in the body, mind, intellect, this play of the gunas which are taking place, unconcerned. Very high state of spiritual development, which is about, here are the gunas which are going on. How can I then begin to look at these gunas and say to myself, I am unconcerned. Whether they're there or not there, I am unconcerned. Not moved by the gunas, who knowing that gunas operate is self-centered and serves not. Not self-centered in the egoistic sense, but centered in the self. Centered in the self means centered in the awareness, centered in the consciousness, as apart from what is going on in that awareness. So, separating out the content of awareness from the awareness itself. And you become the awareness which is just observing whatever is going on. So when I center myself in that awareness, I don't move about, I don't swerve about. I become unconcerned, udasin. Then the next set of things, alike in pleasure and pain. Whether pain is there, pleasure is then alike. This is what I told you before about the horizontalization of experience, neutralization of all these experiences through this sense of equipoise, samatvam, alike in pleasure and pain, who dwells in the self, again in that center of awareness, to whom a clod of earth, precious stone, gold are alike. In other words, his judgment about the things outside, he doesn't value, because value that comes from the vasanas. The vasanas tells me, oh, I like this, I want to go after this. This is like gold. I like gold because it is precious. It is valuable to me. When the vasanas are not there, what becomes this horizontalization of value judgment of all these things, and therefore equanimity. Then, to whom the dear and the not dear are the same. Those who are dear, not dear, doesn't matter. The same kind of centeredness in the self, which is a sense of equanimity about dear and not dear. Firm in wherever you are, centered in the self, and same in censure and praise, and same in honor and dishonor, same to friend and foe, abandoning all undertakings. Nothing new is being undertaken. He is said to have crossed beyond the gunas. So you can see this separation has taken place. The gunas are left by themselves doing what they want to see. I just become the udasin. I just observe and I see whatever is going on, and I become unconcerned. In this center of myself, there is complete equanimity. There is complete calmness and peace. And there is complete silence. This is when one has crossed beyond the gunas. So centered in the self, again, to kind of make it in this pictorial way, level of the body, level of the mind, level of the intellect, all these are taken care of, equal-minded, sama, tulya. And this is what we have to try and do in our day-to-day transactions, is that we become centered in the self, non-attachment, aversion to the gunas, equal-minded in all these aspects of our body, mind, intellect, not initiating any further egocentric activities, centered in the self, non-judgmental, non-reactive, non-active. Now, some people might say, but then what happens to this body, mind, intellect? Is it just going to just lie there like a stone? No. Bhagwan has also given the solution to that. He said, this perfected one, what does he do? He lives only serving him, only devoted to him. This is what Bhagwan has already told us in chapter number 2, that this person of perfection is only concerned with the welfare of humanity. Just like Bhagwan comes into humanity for the upliftment of humanity, this person of perfection is in humanity, serving humanity, raising humanity into the higher consciousness by doing what? By serving Him. Serving the Lord is serving society. Serving the Lord is to be in the service of others, to uplift others through whatever means we can, and just to be devoted to Him. So this is the means of perfection. What is the means of perfection? By serving the Lord with unserving devotion, having crossed beyond the Gunas, he is fit to become Brahman. So this is the means of perfection. And Bhagwan says, I am the abode of Brahman, the immortal, the immutable, and everlasting Dharma, absolute bliss. So when Bhagwan says, when you transcend the Gunas, you will come to me, Bhagwan is saying, I am also the abode of Brahman. Not I'm also abode. I am the abode of Brahman. I am that immortal, immutable, everlasting Dharma. Consciousness, existence, bliss. Absolute. All these are absolutes which are available in Brahman. Beyond time, beyond space, beyond causality, beyond Prakriti, beyond the Gunas. And that is our enterprise. In our life, if we want to go towards perfection, that is the way in which we're going to do it. So again, reminding you of the